How many other businesses can you think of where you could basically make a profit or a return or break even from one sale, basically from a video? Like, and it depends. We spend sometimes a bit more on videos or less depending on the band. But in relation to what you charge compared to what the video is going to cost, it's an absolute no-brainer for any pro band that takes themselves seriously to do it properly, because one or two bookings pays for it, and you're good to rock and roll then.
Hi and welcome to Season 2 of Big Gig Energy, a podcast by musicians for musicians, helping you get bigger gigs no matter what level you're at. I'm your host, Steve Leggett, and with over a decade of experience as a professional musician playing everywhere from pubs and functions to travelling the world in a ukulele boy band, I understand that going pro is often where the challenge really begins. But I'm here to help. Where Season 1 was primarily a manifesto explaining my personal take on what it takes to make it in what can be an extremely unforgiving industry, Season 2 will feature a whole ton of awesome guests that all musicians can learn from. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this season will hopefully be of use in helping you unleash your own big gig energy to work and play better in the music industry. So let's get to it. Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Big Gig Energy. This week I'm delighted to have Joey Vanzetti and Matt Ridgway on the show. Whilst one of my biggest points in Season 1 was that all musicians are also business people, Joey and Matt doubled down on that. Not only are they fantastic musicians, Joey on guitar and vocals and Matt as bassist, but they're also experienced businessmen in their own right. Having both had formal careers, including at Dirtbag Entertainment, which is an extremely well-known agency supplying nationwide wedding entertainment, they've also since set up their own agency, Dirtbag Entertainment, and their own wedding band, The Hustle, which is a bombastically energetic four-piece set line-up wedding band. As experienced agency men, I was fascinated to hear their take on what makes a successful function band. Having seen the industry from a much more formal side than most musicians, and through Dirtbag having all their fingers currently on the pulse of the industry, I suspected they'd have some excellent insights on what people look for when booking a band, and on how bands could level up from being a pub band to the next stage. And as you'll hear, the lads didn't disappoint. It makes their work with The Hustle even more interesting as a case study too. All of their lessons and experience from working with countless other bands, in addition to their own unique style and musical influences, are distilled into this one project. So without further ado, let's roll the tape. Joey and Matt, welcome to Big Gig Energy. Great to have you on board.
Happy to be here, man. I just threw my arms up in the air, but no one can see that because this is an auditory experience for people. But just so people listening know, I'm very excited to be here.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's it. You've got to portray excitement through verbalization, haven't you, Joey? That's
I'm really excited to be.
There we are. That's how we do it. Excellent. So guys, yeah, obviously great to have you on board. I've been aware of you for a while, obviously through your work with The Hustle, Dirtbag Entertainment, and then obviously you were involved with Warble before that. So been sort of, yes, it's great to have you on board and get some of your insights on this, really. I guess to get started off, if you both want to just give us an outline, really, of sort of how you came to music, where it all started, and just give us a sort of an overview of your careers, I guess.
Oh, that's a very. How long do you want your podcast to be? Yeah, let's go on. Yeah. I guess we've both got kind of similar stories. You know, we both did original music back in the day, and even though me and Joey know each other for about 10 years now or something like that. But before then, we were both into similar sort of music scenes: hardcore, screamy, in your face, energetic, going around in dirty, sweaty underground pubs and clubs, screaming in people's faces was what we spent a lot of time doing, which was great
sticky
fun.
Floors, man. Those venues with sticky floors. Yeah. You know which ones I'm talking about. Yeah.
That's it, yeah. But you don't get paid much for those sort of things. So I think we both took a path. I mean, I left music for a while just because I didn't see that it could be profitable unless you made it famous. But then we both independently did things in the wedding industry. So I was playing in a sort of party band. Joey was doing solo stuff, and then there was one night we met, and it was at Dirtbag Entertainment Agency through a day job, helping bands out. So we're there for how many years were we at Dirtbag for? I thought Joey.
You were there long. You were there longer than me. Yeah. That's me a coffee.
So I worked. Yeah, I worked in the sales side of thing. Joey worked in the sort of marketing side of the business as well. We did that for a few years. We both decided it was time to leave at similar times, and we pushed the band. I am skipping this because it is a long, long story, but we pushed the band, we launched the band, and then COVID hit.
Right.
Dramatic pause. COVID hit. and we're like, oh shit, we've just launched a band. What do we do? But we kind of like, it didn't stop us. We carried on working away at it. And then I think we've often said that it was a bit of a blessing, but coming out of COVID, there were so many gigs to be had because obviously everyone had rescheduled weddings. So in theory, our first proper year of gigging with the band, The Hustle, was intense. Like there were so many gigs and we were all over the place. And so we fast tracked everything. And then, I mean, when was that? Was that 3 years? I can't even remember. Time's just gone over the last few years. It's been mental. So we got very, very busy very quickly with the band. And then because of that, we launched Dirtbag Entertainment, where we are working with other bands of a similar vibe. There's so much I've skipped out about that story there, but I'm sure we'll dive into it as we chat.
It feels like a natural progression of things for both of us. And yeah, what's happening now just feels like the right thing at the right time for the experience that we've had and everything that we've done leading up to it. We've never really like ran before we could walk with anything that we've done, which is pretty good. We like to get things done quickly, but yeah, everything's just kind of naturally led to what we're doing now, which is kind of putting the energy into the band and then putting the energy into Dirtbag at the same time. And yeah, it's all cool. It's cool, fun stuff.
It sounds like a really natural progression you've taken with that there. Like you say, you've not run before you can walk. You've got all your steps in place and followed through. And then pandemic was a nightmare for everyone in the industry, wasn't it? But then, like you say, that first year back, I've never had so many gigs. Basically 2 years worth of gigs compacted into back end of 21 and 2022, wasn't it? And just went absolutely nuts for a bit.
100%. And it was really, I've always said that like, I think a gig is worth 10 rehearsals for a band. You know, doing a gig and sort of getting thrown into that environment, and you've got to play. If you make a mistake, you've got to deal with it. You know, and you learn things about the set and stuff like that. I think with that in mind, that first year, because there were so many gigs, it was almost like and the other guys won't mind me saying this. You know, that certainly our drummer in the band had not got much function experience. You know, and it gave them loads of experience as well. It gave us loads of experience as a band, as a unit, and we just sort of skyrocketed really quickly. Yeah, it was. I don't want to say COVID was a good thing, but that busy year of gigs was really good for what we're doing now as well.
I think there was other stuff as well with the experience that we had at Warble and working at an agency. Obviously, Matt saying that, you know, he was doing the sales and I was doing the marketing there. We just kind of took everything that we knew, stuff that we knew had worked at Warble and stuff that we wanted to try at Warble but didn't get the chance to use in the band and push things like really quickly. A lot of people think that the band's been around for longer than it has been, but we've managed to kind of overtake a lot of other bands that we were looking at as main competitors that have been around for like 10 years or longer. And now we're kind of like seen as like more above them in the area that we work in, which is great. But that's from everything that we knew kind of previously, that we could just like really go for it and do the things that we knew would work. So yeah, it's been cool.
But that's a really excellent point, because obviously with your experience working on the agency side of things, you must see through your work there what works and what doesn't. And when people book bands, there must be trends that you can spot and work out the difference between a successful cover band that gets all the gigs and the ones that are still on the agency website but not necessarily getting so much work. So are there any specific standout things that you've noticed that people seem to really go for? And has that changed?
The video. 1,000,000% the video. Like
right, yeah.
It's still been the same really since we started. But when I was doing the marketing stuff at Warble, one of my jobs was in artist liaison, where I would be dealing with act signups. So I'd sit there every day and have a flood of emails from bands that wanted to join the roster, and here's my band, can we do the thing, whatever. I mean, it was the same then, it's still the same now, but like having a killer, and I mean absolutely killer promo video for covers or functional wedding band or whatever you want to call it, that's the ticket, really. There's loads of other stuff involved that we could go into the intricacies of that we do with Dirtbag, our own band, and that we help other people with. But without that video, man, it's so difficult. That is really the thing that you've got to get right and put most of your effort into. Would you agree, Matt?
Yeah,
or?
Totally. I was going to say, we spoke to loads and loads of musicians and bands where they say, oh, our live show is really, really good. It's really energetic, and we do this and we do that. And they sort of like, they talk about how great a show is. And I believe them 100%. And some bands that we've seen as well, and you see live clips of, you know, they are great live, but then you look at their promo video and it doesn't represent what they're about. Now, we, as people that have been in the industry for a while, you can see, and I'm sure you're the same, Steve. You can look at a band and be like, oh, that bass player's got like really good groove, I can tell, or like, the front person's got some attitude there. It's great. But if to the general public, to the wedding clients that are looking, if that video doesn't pop, they're going to scroll on to the next one because there's lots of them,
Completely.
So
Yeah.
it's all about, and even to get more into it than that, we say it's about the video. It's probably about the first 20 seconds of the video, because if you're not capturing someone in that first section, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're moving somewhere else.
Yeah, completely. Because that was how I first came across you guys, actually, because I think we'd both, within a short period of time, done some work with Geraint Perry, videographer. We'd done similar.
Jezza, the man.
He's absolutely brilliant, isn't he? Because I'd done one with Han and Stu and followed him through that, and I think he saw he'd worked with you guys as well. And yeah, it's incredible work, and like you say, it just elevates completely. And to somebody organising a band that doesn't necessarily have a musical background, they're looking for someone that they know is good. Like you say, a good video will show on all kinds of levels, like subliminally and otherwise, that they're taking it seriously, they know what they're doing, and it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
That's exactly it. I mean, you can make a decent video with an iPhone sat at a gig and show people what it's like, but if that's the effort that you're prepared to go to it, if somebody's about to slap 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 on your band, and you can't be bothered to make a pro video, what are they going to be thinking is going to happen down the line?
Yeah, completely. That's sort of your marketing budget, really, isn't it? It's the same as putting a TV advert or something else out in business.
We used to think of it as, if you're going to be putting together a video for the band, or how much it's going to cost and that kind of thing, how many other businesses can you think of where you could basically make a profit or a return or break even from one sale, basically from a video? And it depends. We spend sometimes a bit more on videos or less depending on the band, but in relation to what you charge compared to what the video is going to cost, it's an absolute no-brainer for any pro band that takes themselves seriously to do it properly, because 1 or 2 bookings pays for it, and you're good to rock and roll then. So, but then other bands, and I totally get it from where they're coming from. It can be difficult to pull everything together and to get it done right. And the stuff that we do that makes the videos pop, obviously getting the right people in to film it, but there's other things that we look at as well, with like the venue is such a big part of it. Yeah. Don't get started on venue scouting though. We've been doing that a lot recently for Dirtbag. It's so difficult finding spaces, but
it's the thing I would say it's the hardest thing doing the videos is finding a suitable venue. Certainly when we're trying to make things stand out, it's quite easy to go to a wedding venue that or somewhere like that, but trying to make things a bit different and stand out and be different, it's really, really hard finding a decent space. So if anyone's listening and has got a decent video space, please get in touch, because our list is running short already.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because every now and again I'll see a band has done a video in a venue or a certain space, and then a few weeks later or a couple of months later I might see another band has done a video in the same space, and instantly it devalues both of them when you use the same, especially if you use it in the same way, like the same lighting, there's ways of changing things up and dressing things so that it's a bit more. But sometimes if you see they've done a different video in the same location, it can sort of connect them a bit, and unless it's like got an agency that's got an overall brand for all of your different lineups, it's tricky to get the branding across.
Talking of diminishing values or degrading the video or the band, if you do this kind of like copy and paste repeat process, this is the antithesis to everything that we're about with Dirtbag, basically, is that the whole idea with what we're doing now. So we've noticed a gap. I think that it's just been there for a while, where people have this appetite for real bands that stand on their own and that aren't a carbon copy of a previous one. Now, we totally understand the model of your bigger agencies that you might see out there that may book a venue for the day and shoot 5 or 6 bands, pop a hat on him, wear some braces, make him sing Ed Sheeran and Mumford & Sons, job done, box ticked, conveyor belt, here's another band, whatever. But it's kind of like not very cool, and I think there's a certain type of couple that can see through that a little bit, and they want something that's special and unique and want an actual real band. So that is where like the whole ethos for what we're doing with the videos, the bands we're making, that we're helping, is that yes, they are real bands shot in like different places that have their own identity, really. And I think if you can get that right with your own band, then you're onto something.
I guess filling in a gap of my long-winded story about how we came about is we definitely noticed that in our sort of first year or so with the hustle that people were more interested in like pop punk and rowdy sort of stuff. They were more invested in us as a band as a whole, and we were noticing this sort of thing come about with social media. People were following us on social media. We were getting treated a little bit like a real famous band. You were turning up and people are, oh, I watch you guys on socials all the time and I see all the stuff that you're doing. And we felt that, yeah, there's definitely a market for it.
I mean, question for you, Steve. Have you seen our first video with the hustle before the one that you've seen recently where we're all sweaty and doing pop punk and that kind of thing?
I've not, no.
So not to spoiler it. It's a great video, but we are white shirts, double bass, acoustic guitar. We tapped into that kind of Mumford-y, nice, cute boys in a teepee, like playing some songs archetype. And we wrote that out for a bit, and it did well for us and kind of made us some money and did the thing. But then we kind of realized that we were a different band and that when we were playing gigs, people had an appetite and we had more of an appetite to play more raucous, fun stuff. So they were booking this kind of Mumford archetype band, but then really the electric guitar would come out anyway, and there'll be Walls of Death and stuff like that. So it would be totally different to what was actually on the vid. So we just actually made the band what it actually is now, and then started doing the same with different bands that we're working with. So I don't know if you've noticed anything similar with past few years with the type of songs that people are after and that kind of thing. But I guess you're like super versatile, Steve, as you play in like a million different bands and styles. So.
I'm seeing less of the Mumford and Sonsy type thing because especially a few years ago, the whole folksy thing was definitely a big deal. Especially when I started out with the ukulele band, it was huge that everyone was doing Mumford and Sons-esque stuff. There were lots of acoustic guitars and flat caps and braces and all that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of there was a bit of a postmodern jukebox thing as well for a few years where that was huge and lots of those, and there's still a few of them about, but it feels like that's fading now in favour of more rocky type groups.
I'm very happy about this. The current archetype fits into everything that I've grown up with. So yes, long may it continue.
Long live the guitar.
It's like, I always remember sort of being back at Warble and speaking to clients, and you get a lot of people call up and they're like, oh, we want a band for our wedding. Okay, what kind of band are you looking for? And it would always be, oh, like it's a festival themed wedding. We want a festival style band. Like, well, the line is always which festival. Are you talking Download or are you talking, Glastonbury or whatever, And what they meant was a Mumford and Sons style. They want teepees. They want that sort of vibe. It was very much just that it's almost like people didn't care what the music was being played as long as it was like they had the look and the vibe of like the double bass, and that sort of thing. But now it's definitely, we see a lot of people saying they want high energy, interactive, pop punk, like I want a gig at my wedding, that kind of thing. And that we get very excited when we hear those kind of lines, and that's what we're all about. And I think it definitely is where things are going. If you look at the age group of where people are getting married, it's 25 to 35 on average. So they sort of grew up through the noughties and 2010s and that sort of time. And that's when there was a resurgence, pop punk was Blink-182, Green Day was still, and that kind of thing. It's like, it's great for us, man.
Yeah, there are some fantastic pop punk bands coming up, and it's like you say, it's great to see all this stuff getting played again. And I think it's just people, effectively our generation, getting to that point where they can afford to get married and all that sort of thing, and going from there. Totally. But it was an interesting point before where you're sort of just circling back a bit, talking about the lineups and this sort of thing, and having like a set thing where it feels like a set band. I do see quite a dichotomy in the industry at the moment. I guess it's always been a bit like this, where there's two types of bands. Traditionally you'd have like a set lineup, and that would be the band you saw in all the promotional material, and those would be the guys you'd hire. Whereas on the other side of the industry, and this is sort of where I tap in a bit more, you've got bands where there's a brand and then a sort of collective of players, and you hire the brand, but you get the band you're given on the day, sort of thing. How do you find the difference and sort of the advantages and disadvantages of specifically what you guys do with set things?
Before we speak on that, I'd love to hear your opinion, Steve, on like what you think about it all, because I mean, we have our own opinions on it, and obviously there's a certain way we've chosen to take the hustle, but then there's people like yourself, which you make your money from doing those kind of gigs and like working with those bands. So how do you feel about it, and what's it like playing those gigs where you know that you're not on the video, and does it really matter?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the strength of the branding. So some bands get it very right, and some perhaps less so. And to an extent, some clients are more fussed than others as well about exactly what they're getting. I think you can always tell the difference when a band have played together a lot, or at least when a lineup within a band have played together a lot. You can always tell the difference. It's always that little bit tighter. But at the same time, if you've got the branding done well enough, there's a couple of examples I work with I can think of where the brand is so strong and the team of players they've got know the material well enough that you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference. But yeah, at the same time, I think the thing is, obviously my side of things is that I don't really like the commitment. I like to just sort of learn the set, come in, play, and the guys I work with, it sort of adds to the fun in a way, is that you turn up, you might meet people for the first time on the gig, and then there's that like a spontaneity that you wouldn't get necessarily if you'd rehearsed. But then on the other hand, if you've rehearsed with the guys, then you've got a tightness that you wouldn't get otherwise. So I guess it's different things, different advantages, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I'll let you speak, Matt.
I'm going to try not to rant, and I know Joey's smirking when I sort of lead this in a little bit. So we obviously we were in a position where, you know, the hustle was fully booked up virtually. We were getting countless inquiries that we couldn't fill, and it would have been very, very easy for us to say, well, let's have an A team and a B team, and then maybe a C team down the line, and sort of pull different people in. But we genuinely felt that part of the product that we offer, part of the band, is the friendship between the guys. There's a lot of stuff we do within the songs that, you know, you couldn't do if it was 3 different people playing with you. You know, if it works because we're a unit together. But also everything outside the actual performance sort of works better. You know, everyone sort of works as a team and all these sort of things and stuff like that. I guess our branding is not so much branding, but almost like our sort of social media insights into the band, and people seeing the same faces all the time. So it didn't feel right for us to have a B team and a C team, because it would almost be like not as good as the original hustle. Do you know what I mean?
Got you.
That's when we took the path of saying, right, well, if we had an agency, if we're unavailable, we'll recommend other bands who have got the same ethos, the same idea, but they're bands that are these 4 guys. You know, that sort of approach to it is kind of the way we went. I get a little bit wound up when I speak to clients that are speaking to us, and they're like, "Oh, we're also looking at another band," and they might mention a band that we know are several lineups. They're a collective, you know, and that sort of thing. And the clients aren't aware, you know, and if you think a client's spending a lot of time researching the band, trying to find the right thing, they see a video, they choose the band based on who they're seeing. And yes, the 3 or 4 guys that turn up on their wedding day are going to smash it. You know, they're pro musicians. We know that. But the journey for these clients that are spent trying to choose the right band, and then 3 other guys turn up, it feels a little bit wrong. Now, there are obviously other bands that have that model and say, look, we're a collective of musicians. You know, it's going to be different people, whatever. And that works for a lot of people. It certainly works for the corporate market. You know, there are a lot of people that they're almost like, I don't care who turns up as long as I've got a decent band. And that's when the branding comes in, and they know what they're going to get, and they know the kind of thing they're going to get. But I think for the wedding market, you know, people spend days choosing the right flower to have on a table, you know, and they spend the right days choosing the right, you know, and if it's different people, it can be a bit upsetting. That's my approach on it. That's my thought on it. I do get both sides. And I didn't rant, Joey.
A little bit ranty, but it's okay. I feel like weirdly the existence of these other bands or brands, as you want to call them, multiple lineups, helps what we're doing with the Hustle and Dirtbag, because it makes us stand out, because we can kind of say with more confidence if people are going to book the Hustle. No one ever really asks, but if they ever did, are we going to get the guys in the video? We're like, well, unless something ridiculous happens, well, like get struck by lightning on the way out, yeah, you're going to get the guys. And if we do ever dep, we're like very upfront about it, and it's only for a specific reason. And I guess, you know, we got to a point with the Hustle where, yeah, we could have done the A, B, and C team type thing. And really, there may have been an easier route But I think because we had the experience at working at the agency and knowing what we know, we felt like it would have been a missed opportunity to not do something bigger than us and grow things outside of the hustle. So I totally understand why these other bands would do that. And I guess if we hadn't done what we've done at Wallball or worked at other agencies or done what we've done, we might not have seen that as like a possibility to start building other bands because it's not easy. Not every band can build other bands in the same way as them, like what we're doing. So yeah, it makes sense.
I think there are disadvantages as well to how we do it. I mean, I think of there's only been one, thankfully, but the one time, Joey, where you've been too ill to get COVID to do a gig. I think in the sort of the brand model of like that you talked about, Steve, is like there'd be a list of singer guitarists like, hey, Steve, can you step in and do this? You know, but in our situation, I depped out a couple of times and we'd had different, and I think for the drums, bass, and sax to dep out is quite straightforward, but the singer frontman, it felt very
just so important, Steve. I'm just so damn important to the whole operation.
We couldn't do it without Joey, basically. So we actually
you all heard that, right? Keep that in. Keep that in the. If you cut that, Steve, I'm coming for your ass, definitely.
So we ended up we found another band and said to the client, we'd rather give you a different band. Here's them, they're tight, rather than bring in a singer guitarist. And it was all fine. It all went really well, and we looked after the client. But I think that our model does cause disadvantages with that. You know, as soon as you've got to replace somebody last minute, it's tricky. You know, thankfully we have got stand-ins for everyone now, and it's all fine. But it's certainly something to be aware of.
That's really interesting. Yeah, definitely. I suppose, yeah, just like you say, there's the thing of if somebody can't make the gig. And I suppose as well, there's the availability thing as well. If you've all got to be completely all in order to not be out with other bands if a gig opportunity comes in. So you've got to take that leap of faith, but then at the same time, as the calendar fills up, it's got to be worth it. But I do love the approach you've taken. There's an excellent post you guys did on Instagram I saw the other day. We've gone into depth on each member and like their album influences and just who'd been influenced by what albums, and it was great because it fleshed out the personality of each player, and it adds that. Again, rather than sort of having you'll get a bass player, it was our bass player is into this and our guitarist is into this, and even if they're not necessarily going to be playing it on the night, it does add something that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were getting a brand rather than a set band. I guess that's the sort of, so yeah.
It allows us to market the band in ways that some other bands can't, because Matt and I think, are in the same approach where we're still very aware that we are a wedding party covers band, but we do treat it like we're a real band, in the way that we act, in the content that we do. You know, we do everything that a real, actual, proper band would do, just to kind of get that across, because, you know, we do love it and clients want to see that kind of stuff as well. And that is the kind of post that maybe an original band would do, is to kind of outline the members and do different bits and pieces. So yeah, it's quite cool that we can tap into doing that stuff. And again, that comes back to what I was saying about the way there's other bands exist that maybe have multiple lineups, actually helps us in a way, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of separate ourselves and do different things. So yeah, there's no right or wrong. But yeah, we just do our thing. So
it's really good to hear that. So yeah, is there any sort of advice you'd go for bands that sort of like, for example, I see a lot of like bands on the pub circuit that aspire the next step up is to go and start doing weddings and functions and things. Obviously we've touched on video, but is there anything else you can think of that these guys should be looking into to take that next step and start aiming for the big bucks?
The first thing is get in touch with us, because we work with a few bands that do that. We're actually shooting a video tonight for a band who, they're sort of, they're smashing the pub scene. They're doing really, really well. They're great, but they just don't know the wedding industry. They don't know how to market themselves. They don't know what to do with it and stuff like that. So we've been speaking to them for a while. We're going to get a banging video for them as well. But I think you'll know there's such a difference between a pub gig and a wedding gig. You know, there's so many things to sort of take into consideration, and often it's that conversation that people have, like, oh, well, how can a wedding band charge like 2, 3, 4 times the amount that it costs for a pub band? It's like, well, there's 2, 3, 4 times the amount of risk. You know, there's if someone's ill in a pub band, they can call up the pub and go, sorry guys, we can't make it tonight. whatever, so and so's early, can't sing, you'll be fine. You can't do that on a wedding day. So we talked about depths and people, and you've got to have that infrastructure there and the ability to play with other people. And a lot of pub bands, it's scary. They rehearse every week, and to think that, oh, one day Steve might be ill, so we'll bring in a different bass player. The thought of that is quite daunting for the first time you're doing it. I can remember the first time I had a dep in a band and stuff like that. It's a lot to think about, but also things like equipment. You've got to have the right equipment for the band. Set list. It's not about playing what you want for a pub crowd anymore. It's about keeping a wedding crowd happy. We had a conversation with one of our bands, and they didn't play any Arctic Monkeys, for example. And we're like, well, why not? Just don't really like it. You kind of got to move that to one side. It's you're playing weddings now. It's very different.
Yeah, I think there's this is, going back to that conversation that we had with that band, there was an element of, we kind of told them that you get out what you put in to everything. And looking at them, they looked, sounded, dressed, everything just screamed pub band from the whole thing. So there was never a chance that anyone would really book them for the wedding unless it was on the off chance that they saw them and wanted like a cheap deal. So yeah, it's like acting the part before you do it. And like a lot of pub bands will just go in like t-shirt and jeans and not really care what they wear and that kind of stuff, but start doing the things that you would expect a proper actual band to do and put yourself like in that place, specifically, and you'll start getting the right gigs from it. Yeah, play the right songs, dress right, do those kind of things, and act the part, and good stuff will come your way. I guess we were lucky, Matt, to have like a lot of experience in weddings as well prior to the hustle, so we kind of knew the score a little bit. So that definitely helped. We were putting everything together. So
I think there's so much to take into consideration that we almost take for granted now as well, of around the actual playing. So forget the performance bit. You can have a killer set, you can have a whole massive repertoire and be able to do whatever on the night and entertain everybody. But all the things around the performance as well, sort of like, liaising with the venue politely and professionally, loading in and setting up discreetly, timings, knowing how the running of a day goes on a wedding, and working around it and advising the client. Because, remember, when we talk about weddings, these clients, they've never got married before. Usually, obviously, some people have, but most of them, it's their first time doing it. They don't know when you should have music or how the day runs, and they come to you for advice. And if you haven't got that answer, well, why am I giving you guys 1,500 quid to come to a day? You don't know what's going on, and stuff like that. Dealing with drunk people. Here's a big one. At a pub, if someone's being leery and causing issues, generally you can tell them where to go, or
there might be a bouncer on the door or something, or they get kicked out.
That's a really good point, Joey. We've said this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some people think that like the pubs is where you're like, well, for me, I guess I did thicken my skin playing a lot of the pubs, but I don't know if you found this as well, Steve, but obviously sometimes these weddings, maybe like on a privately owned farm, TP, middle of nowhere, no rules, anything goes. It's crazy. Like you just have to deal with it. And I think that can be a bit of a shock to some people. I mean, we revel in that now, and we're totally cool and just make sure we have a good time. But I think for people new to the industry, it can be a bit of a shock to see what some weddings and parties can be like, because there ain't no bouncer in the middle of a field in Wales. It's just, you're there.
Completely, yeah.
So survive.
You can't just knock someone off stage with the end of your bass if they get too friendly, because it might be someone's mother-in-law or someone's relative.
But also, you're playing for someone's like the biggest day of their lives, and all their friends and family are there. So if you piss them off, you're kind of like you've got them all against you, So, but they're drunk and they're having a good time, and your job is to make them get leery and have a good time. So there's a really fine line. And people coming on stage, you've got to get the balance right. You can't just tell them to fuck off. You kind of got to have your fun and like politely escort you back to the dance floor kind of thing,
It's a lesson in diplomacy, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
It's absolutely right.
Crowd control is a skill that every wedding band needs to have, or at least have like someone in the band that can deal with it well. Otherwise, you're going to struggle.
Yeah. So going forward, obviously, I can see you're starting to set up other bands within Dirtbag, and I saw, was it Moonshine, is it? I've seen come up.
Moonshine Boys, yeah.
Yeah, that's looking excellent. And so what next for Dirtbag? Where do you guys go from here?
Good question. Well, we're shooting another video tonight, so more bands I think are on the horizon. We are at the moment still in a kind of building stage, just building a very solid roster of very cool bands. Because we're lucky enough to have the inquiries and stuff coming in for the Hustle and some of the other bands that we can start getting these other bands booked. We have this one we're shooting tonight. We have another one that we're kind of working with. We're going to keep it small to begin with. We don't want to onboard like 100 bands because it's not going to work for us. It's only Matt and I that run the entire thing. So we're kind of like tight-knit family of like proper bands.
Yeah, on that as well.
We'll be building up the roster.
Our ethos has always been as well. That's something that we learned from working at Warble, is when you've got so many bands, you can't know the ins and outs of every band because there's too many of them. We work with, at the moment, we've got 9 bands. We're looking at a couple more. We have a WhatsApp group with every single band. We're in constant comms with them all the time. We know what they're about. We know what's going on. If we have too many bands, we can't do that. So we want to maintain, at least for as long as possible, maintain sort of this ethos of being approachable, being musician focused as well.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
So just to wrap things up, normally go for an album recommendation. This doesn't have to be like your opinion on the best album ever or whatever, just an album that you might be really into right now, or if someone wants to get an idea of the kind of stuff you're into, something you'd recommend. I don't know, just an album each and why, please, gents.
Do you want to go first, Matt, so I can think for a second? It's not going to be this best album, but it's just an album that you want people to listen to, right?
So I would say, as a bass player, and so I'm aiming this at you as well, Steve. I know you play guitar as well, but so Death from Above 1979 are celebrating 20 years of their amazing album. You're a Woman, I'm a Machine. Is that the right title?
Yes, I think that's it.
Or I'm a Machine, You're a Woman. Oh, you know them, right? But yeah. It amazes me how many people don't know them as a band, and they're so different. They're so amazing. They're touring again this year, so they're playing at the Ritz in Manchester later this year. Amazing live. A lot of people talk about Royal Blood when it comes to like duos with no guitar. It's like Royal Blood haven't got a patch on Death from Above. Like they're just, I love them. So good.
Absolutely. Outrageous now is another is completely different vibe, much more poppy, but at the same time the songwriting and it's fantastic stuff.
It's so good, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm so glad you're into
I might see you at the Manchester gig, actually, to be fair.
Yes. Oh, I owe you a pint. Yeah, we'll have a drink together, man.
Bring it on. And how about yourself, Joey?
I know we talked a lot about pop punk and emo during this, but I'm a massive hip hop lover. So I'm going to recommend The Impossible Kid by Aesop Rock. I'm very much into not like gangster rap, like guns and hoes and bitches. This is like intellectual hip hop with ridiculous amount of vocabulary. It will break your brain, but in the most beautiful way ever. So if you're into that kind of stuff, just listen to any Aesop Rock. But The Impossible Kid is like peak album from him.
That's awesome. Well, gents, I think we'll call that there, but thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing to have you both on. Really appreciate your expertise and experience, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us, man.
Thanks a lot, man. Take care.
Cheers. Woo.
Well, there we are. It was an absolute pleasure chatting to the lads there. Some really interesting takes on a whole load of subjects. In particular, it was great to get their takes on the difference between bands with set and with floating lineups. And also the importance of prioritising a kick-ass video show reel. Their recent show reel, filmed by Joel Gardner, is well worth checking out as it captures the energy and the range of their live performances, offering a genuine snapshot of the band's personality and chemistry. But don't take my word for it. I'll link it in the show notes and you can check it out and see for yourself. There's a whole load to think about there, but I think the main point I take from the interview is about their commitment to commitment and going all in. As a musician, it takes real confidence. Heck, you could call it real big gig energy, I guess, to commit to working with a set lineup. You're trusting that the work will come in for the one band and one band alone, rather than having a collective of loads of musicians playing under the Hustle banner. They've instead handpicked and curated entire new bands, each with their own identity, borne out by the individual players that make them. So I suppose the overall lesson is this. If you commit to investing fully in an individual band's lineup, image, setlist and promotional materials, it's not so much a case of fake it till you make it, as it is, if you build it, they will come. As a great philosopher once said, you got to speculate to accumulate. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks again to Joey and Matt for chatting with me. I'll be posting their links in the show notes so you can check out their work, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Big Gig Energy podcast. This is the bit where I'm obliged to fish for engagement and stuff, so you can find me on Instagram as Big Gig Energy, that's BIGGIGENERGY, or you can get in touch via email at biggigenergy@gmail.com. I'll link anything relevant in the show notes below, but otherwise, if you've had any thoughts on this episode or would be interested in some one-to-one coaching for yourself and or your band, feel free to get in touch. Otherwise, do all the usual social media stuff, I guess, and let's keep the discussion going. Many thanks as ever to all my supporters and collaborators, and as always, best of luck with your next big gig.